All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about one of the most pivotal and, frankly, one of the most tragic periods in American history. We're looking at the long, slow, unavoidable journey that led a brand new nation to turn its own cannons on itself.
And the whole thing really boils down to this one single question. How did this incredible dream, this idea of a country stretching from sea to shining sea, just completely spiral into the absolute nightmare of a civil war? Well, the engine chugging this train forward had a name: Manifest Destiny. And this wasn't just some political slogan. It was a belief, a deep-seated idea that the U.S. wasn't just grabbing land. No, it was fulfilling God's plan, spreading its ideals across the whole continent.
Yeah, and this quote from John O'Sullivan, the guy who actually came up with the name, it just perfectly sums up that whole mindset. He's basically saying, this land is ours, God gave it to us. For so many people at the time, this wasn't an invasion, it wasn't conquest, it was just destiny.
But, and this is a huge but, there was a totally different side to that story. Listen to what Cherokee leader Speckled Snake had to say. For Native Americans, for the people who were already there, Manifest Destiny wasn't some grand divine plan. It was just a constant, brutal pressure. Go away. Get out. You're too close. And you can see the result right here. The map tells the whole story, doesn't it? The original 13 states, and then boom, the Louisiana Purchase, land from Mexico. The country just explodes westward at this incredible speed. But, with every single new piece of land, a shadow was growing right alongside it.
So what was this shadow? Well, it was cast by one single toxic question, a question that every new piece of territory forced America to answer. You could say it was the hidden price tag on all that land.
And here it is, the question that poisoned everything. Every debate in Congress, every negotiation, every single time a new state wanted to join the Union. Was this new land going to be slave or free? Would slavery, the very engine of the Southern economy, get to expand right along with the country? If you want a perfect example of how this whole thing played out, just look at Texas. So back in the 1820s, you've got American settlers moving into Texas, which was part of Mexico at the time. And they brought their slaves with them, even though slavery was illegal in Mexico. Well, you can imagine how that went over. That tension is what fueled the Texas Revolution, their independence, and then in 1845, the U.S. annexes them. And let's be clear about the key point here. This was all about expanding the territory of slavery. So, annexing Texas leads straight into war with Mexico. And America wins, big time. But that victory, it was like a poisoned apple. Because now you have all this new land. We're talking California, Nevada, Utah, the whole Southwest. And it completely shattered the delicate balance between slave states and free states. Oh, and here's a crazy bit of irony. The war was basically a dress rehearsal for the Civil War. It's where guys like Ulysses S. Grant and Robert E. Lee learned how to lead armies they would soon lead against each other. So winning that war actually made things 1,000 times worse back home.
So, at this point, the country is like a ship with huge cracks in its hull, and the politicians are running around with duct tape, trying these desperate little fixes, but every patch they slap on just seems to make the leaks bigger.
And one person who saw this clearer than anyone was a lawyer from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln. His whole House-divided speech, it nailed the problem perfectly. He basically said, look, you can't have one house with two completely different sets of rules. It's not going to work. He knew the country couldn't keep pretending to be one thing while being two.
Because that's what it was. It was really two different Americas living under one flag. In the North, you had factories, cities, industry, an economy humming along on immigrant labor. But in the South, it was a totally different world. An agricultural empire, a world built on the backs of millions of enslaved people. They didn't just have different economies, they were fundamentally different societies. And all that tension just led to one political disaster after another in the 1850s. It was like a train wreck in slow motion. First, you get the Compromise of 1850, which was supposed to make everyone happy, but, surprise, it made everyone mad. Then came the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which had this bright idea to let settlers vote on slavery. What happened? Pro- and anti-slavery folks rushed in and started killing each other. They literally called it Bleeding Kansas. And then, the final nail in the coffin, the Dred Scott decision. The Supreme Court basically said Congress had no power to stop slavery from spreading anywhere. That was it. Any hope of compromise was just gone. The whole system was falling apart before their very eyes. So, with the political system in ruins, you arrive at this one moment, the final straw, the election of 1860.
So take a look at the popular vote. It's a mess, right? The country is so split that you have four major candidates running, and the winner, Lincoln, doesn't even get to 40%. This right here is what a completely fractured nation looks like on paper. But then, you look at the Electoral College and it tells a totally different story. Even with less than 40% of the popular vote, Lincoln wins, and he wins big. So how's that possible? Simple. He completely swept the North, where most of the people, and therefore most of the electoral votes, were. And this is the part that changes everything. If you were in the South, you looked at that election map and it was terrifying. A man just won the presidency. A man whose entire party was built on stopping the spread of slavery, and he did it without a single Southern vote. To them, the message was loud and clear. You don't matter anymore. Your voice is gone. So what was their response? A single word: secession. Their whole argument was pretty straightforward, at least to them. They said, hey, we chose to join this club, so we can choose to leave it. And they weren't bluffing. South Carolina was out the door just a few weeks after Lincoln won. Then 10 more states followed suit. Suddenly, that house-divided Lincoln talked about, it wasn't just a powerful metaphor anymore. It was real. And that was it. All the talking, all the compromises, all the political maneuvering, it was all over. That one big question, would America be a nation of slavery or a nation of freedom, wasn't going to be decided in Congress. It was going to be decided with guns. The war officially kicked off when Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, a U.S. Army post. And it's really important to remember this. When the war started, Lincoln's #1 goal wasn't freeing the slaves. It was just holding the country together, preserving the Union. But the war would take on a life of its own and change everything.
And the price for finally answering that question was just unbelievable. Around 620,000 soldiers died, more American lives than in any other war ever. It's just a staggering number. It's the human cost of a country that just couldn't figure out how to solve its biggest problem without tearing itself apart. So that's where we'll leave it. The war did settle a few things, right? Secession was off the table. Slavery was abolished. One nation was hammered back together by force. But it leaves us with a much tougher question, one we're still wrestling with. How do you really heal a wound that deep? Did the Civil War truly make America one house? Or did it just force two warring families to live under the same roof, with the bitterness lingering for generations?